Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Impact Summit. I hope everyone's enjoying the show so far. I know I certainly am. So this is a very special session. We have with us Saskia Bruysten, who is the CEO of Yunus Social Business. Now, the topic for today is social entrepreneurs, the Trojan horses of impact. Just a reminder to everyone tuning in, please put your questions in the chat function and we will come to them at the end. And any general comments or discussion, please feel free to have. You can also book meetings, you can visit the virtual booths, but we do hope you stick around for this because this is going to be super interesting. So also if you use Twitter or social media of any type, please hashtag Impact Summit 21. So without further ado, I have a little intro, if you will, about Saskia Bruysten. So she's a leader in the social business movement. Saskia co-founded Yunus Social Business, or otherwise known as YSB, together with Nobel Peace Prize Laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. YSB funds invest in social businesses in developing countries with affordable financing and growth support. So Saskia has been awarded some amazing awards. I'm going to do my best to go through them here. You've had the Vordenker Award in 2020, which was by BCG, and the Handelsblatt, the Bold Woman Award in 2020 by Veuve Clicquot. You were also the recipient of the Capital's Young Elite in 2017 and 2018, and is a member of Young Presidents Organization. Most recently, together with the World Economic Forum, she's co-initiated the COVID Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs. So Saskia was appointed to the EU Commission's expert group on social business and has advised Richard Branson's B team. And for those that don't know, it works with leaders and actors within the global economy to rebuild a more sustainable future. So additionally, she's lectured at top universities, including the World Economic Forum and the Clinton Global Initiative. I mean, the list goes on. In particular, YSB Corporate Innovation partners with established corporations to help them use their core competencies to address social problems. So prior to YSB, Saskia was the co-CEO of Grumman Creative Lab and a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group in Munich and New York. She holds an MBA in the European Business School in Germany and a Master's of Science in International Relations. I mean, it's a huge resume, Saskia, but welcome most importantly to Impact Summit.
Thanks so much, January. I'm blushing. It's really it's good to read that somewhere perhaps, but not to listen to it the whole time.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but I just wanted everyone to understand who we are speaking to.
Exactly.
Very important. So these are wonderful achievements. And with that in mind, and given today's topic of social entrepreneurs, the Trojan horses of impact, let's perhaps, give a definition, if you will, of what an entrepreneur is. So I thought, I did the old Google and found that being an entrepreneur is an employee who is tasked with developing an innovative idea or project from within a company. So the entrepreneur may not get all the outside risks or reap all the rewards, perhaps an entrepreneur does. But however, the entrepreneur has access to the resources and the capabilities of an established company. So then let's define social impact. I know we've all heard about it a lot today, but it's a significant positive change that addresses a pressing social challenge. So my first question to you, Saskia, is what is a social entrepreneur? Is it simply entrepreneurial employees working to create social and environmental impact within corporations? And if so, what are some of the challenges, and opportunities they particularly might face today?
Absolutely, January. So thanks so much. And we can talk about what we do at Yunus Social Business in general a little bit later, but perhaps focusing first on one of our two business units, which is working with global corporations to help them transform their companies into more purpose-led organizations. There we're looking at one way of doing that is through what we call corporate social entrepreneurship, meaning indeed, an employee within a company that takes the initiative or gets the mandate to create a business unit within the company that solves a social or environmental problem and is particularly dedicated to solving that particular social or environmental problem. So to give you an example, over a decade ago, we co-founded such a social business with a large global corporation, Danone. So Danone, actually it's pronounced in English, and we created a new company that provides yogurt that is enriched with micronutrients and vitamins to fight malnutrition to the poor in Bangladesh. But at the same time, it is a profitable business. It recovers its costs and can continue running on its own steam. And obviously, and that was also set up in some ways by a team of corporate social entrepreneurs inside of Danone that were the driving force behind this, and have ensured that this indeed was not just one cute little project on the side, but it had a much broader ripple effect around the company, which I can talk about later. But yes, indeed, that's what a social entrepreneur is.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about now because it's super interesting. So with the focus, I guess YSB, from my understanding, focuses on the financing and the growing of social businesses in developing companies, and most importantly, to harness the power of business to end poverty. So can you talk perhaps exactly how you do this? Like, you've got Yunus Funds, obviously, and then Yunus Corporate Innovation. You spoke to it just then, but just a little bit more. Dig deep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I co-founded Yunus Social Business now literally 10 years ago, and we set out to basically create more social businesses in the world because we believe that business is the strongest force in society. You know, governments have their role to play in setting boundaries, NGOs have their role to play to really get to the very, very poorest and disaster situations, etc. But we felt that to be able to solve the big problems that we have ahead of us and also that we already have today, like inequality, poverty, climate change, etc., it was completely needed to also involve the business sector. But the current business sector, the way that currently incentives are set up in the current capitalist model that we have, business is not doing enough to solve the problem, but indeed actually perhaps in some cases is causing many of these problems, particularly if you think about climate change.
Right.
So we said in some ways you need a new class of business that is still a business and still works within the capitalist model, but that works based on a different motivation. And that is what we call a social business. So a company that is 100% focused on solving a social or environmental problem, but that still works as a business. So the only difference is, whereas a typical business would be focusing mostly on the shareholder return, this would focus mostly on solving the social problem, and that is the main difference in like the perspective of where this business comes from. So that was basically what we set out to do, and we do that now concretely through two ways. On the one hand, we have our own basically funding or fund where we actually provide long-term loans to social business entrepreneurs in a number of developing countries or emerging countries, I should say. And we do that in East Africa, India, and Latin America, where we have our own portfolio of companies. And on the other hand, we work as a consultant / venture builder together with global corporations to help them use their core business to set up social businesses or to buy from them, etc. So a little bit like what I just explained with the Danone case, that we do on a more broad scale with global corporations in a consulting type way. So those are the two ways we work on the topic of social business, like bottom up, really grassroots, and also top down, because we need to get the big corporate giants involved as well. Otherwise, we won't really see a big change because currently the impact economy is still too small.
Interesting. So I guess for those tuning in as well, let's briefly turn, if we will, to your co-founder, Nobel Peace Prize Laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. That those that don't know, he's a Bangladeshi social entrepreneur, banker, economist, civil society leader. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for founding the Grameen Bank and pioneering the concepts of microcredit and microfinance. We need a whole other session just to cover his accomplishments, Saskia, but I'm very intrigued with how you were working together prior to YSB, but how did your worlds collide and you come up with the concept of YSB funds?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, January. In a nutshell, I used to be a completely mainstream, let's say, nerdy management consultant, did my work of like little Excel sheets and beautiful PowerPoint presentations in consulting corporate clients. Yeah. And up until that moment had been very like streamlined. Okay, business is the way to go. You have to be successful. You have to make money. That was the way I was sort of, I guess, brainwashed by society. And I think the first time sort of in my mid to late 20s, I thought about, well, is this all I want to do the rest of my life? What's my path going forward? In some ways, like that Generation Y question, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think I came to the conclusion that it probably wasn't going to be exactly this, but that I did want to use the tools of business in some shape or form. But I really had no clue how that would exactly work. And I did another master's in London at that point in time, and was really lucky to hear Mohammed Yunus speak at LSE in London. And he talked about this combination of social and business, what he called social business. And it just totally clicked with me. I'm like, that makes so much sense. I believe in business, and I believe in theory, capitalism. Yes. But capitalism needs to be amended, and it needs to include also other motivations of us human beings, apart from just making money, because we have many motivations. We're multidimensional as people. And I said, if we add those different motivations of us human beings, then also the capitalist model can be amended and can work much better. And that is, for me, the logic of an impact economy or a social business economy that actually also focuses on maximizing the social outcomes. And that was just a complete eye-opener for me. And I just said, that's so cool, Yunus. Here's my business card.
Wow.
I wanna contribute to this. And I followed up with an email, and eventually I flew to Bangladesh, and I wanted to see if what he had been talking about was indeed concrete and real. And indeed it was. And he's not just a little professor that teaches and just comes up with great theories, but he's a amazing entrepreneur that has really changed the lives of millions of people. And that impressed me. So I said, let's find a way to get that success from Bangladesh that he had with Grameen Bank, let's say the example of microfinance banks around the world and other social businesses. How can we bring that to other countries? And that's when eventually then Yunus Social Business was born, and we set that up together with another friend of mine, Sophie Eisenman, and just said, let's give it a try. Let's bootstrap this, and let's see what happens.
Brilliant.
10 years later.
It pays to get your business card. I know we're all in this virtual world, but LinkedIn people, send them a message. However it is you need to connect. It's very important. Especially for social.
It was a little pre-LinkedIn, I guess, roughly.
Yes, it was a pre-LinkedIn, indeed. So actually on that note, so both social entrepreneurship and charity, they strive to change the world in some way or another using tools and knowledge to create long-term solutions to very complex problems, let's face it. So often effective charity work, I just kind of want to talk about charity work and what you guys do, is sometimes short-term charity work and in need of repetition, whereas social entrepreneurs seek more long-term solutions. So I'm curious, even Mr. Yunus has said himself once that the charity dollar has one life, a social dollar can be invested over and over again. So I'm just interested if you can elaborate. I know he said this, but if you can elaborate upon this point, and how often, I guess, charity organizations are mistaken for social impact businesses, and maybe some key differences.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. I mean, the word social enterprise is quite wide, and it includes everything from super commercial companies with a little bit of an impact all the way through to pretty much innovative NGOs or innovative charities. And what we look at is really social businesses, which is, let's say, one part of that spectrum, and that are indeed companies that do generate revenues to cover their costs. They're, from a legal perspective, usually a for-profit structure mostly. But their clear defined goal, and also written into the articles, etc., is to solve a particular social or environmental issue. That's what we mean with the business. So they social business. So they are really businesses, but they are focused on solving a social problem. So what's the difference to a typical charity? Well, I think Yunus put it so nicely. A charity dollar has one life, so you give it, it goes, it does its work,
right?
But it doesn't come back. So that means next year,
doesn't replenish.
Next year, you have to find fresh money to do the same good work.
Yeah.
And the next year again, you have to get the same new fresh money to do it. So that's often, I mean, everyone knows this. There are all these examples of these white elephants in development where somebody builds a beautiful hospital, but then nobody thought about who's going to pay the operating expenses in the coming years. That's one of those typical development issues. And that's where a social business is just such a powerful logic, because if it is profitable enough, it is able to work on its own steam. And after that initial investment, it doesn't actually need constant new money. Of course, also any business needs new investments perhaps at some point in time. So it's not like no investments are ever needed, because if you want to grow, you need investment. But the whole point is, in general, it's set up as a self-sustaining system, a problem-solving machine. And that's why I think it's such an essential tool in achieving the sustainable development goals, in basically solving any major problems in the world. We need the business approach, because there's just not going to be enough charitable and governmental money available to achieve that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess that brings me to my next question surrounding the different ways in which you can actually create social impact. So there's different ways. Obviously, there's ESG investing, which is environmental, social, and governance investing, a strategy you can use to put all your money to work with companies that strive to make, ultimately the world a better place. There's CSR, so corporate social responsibility, a self-regulating business model that helps a company to become more socially accountable. And so I guess my question is, why social entrepreneurship rather than ESG and CSR?
Okay. Well, maybe let me take a step back, because I don't know in how far, like, there are all these alphabet soup of words flying around. So let me just clarify. So there's basically, everyone's talking these days about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. But ESG in the end really focuses on measuring the harm that corporations are currently creating. It's basically looking how it can sort of reduce the negative impact. Meaning it checks, let's say, I don't know, a company XYZ, what are their CO2 emissions? A company XYZ, what is, let's say, how much diversity do they have or not have in their boards? It measures, how much child slavery do they have in their value chains? It just, first of all, looks at what the current status quo is, to measure it, and to then slowly but surely ensure that there's less harm being created. Whereas then there's the other side, which is sort of the whole topic of impact investing, or what I call social business investing, which is all about actually creating positive impact. So the one is about less harm,
right,
less bad. The other one is explicitly, intentionally positive. So I would see that that's quite different, just in terms of like the way we're looking at things. And so, and then in between, and then there's also the topic of CSR, which is, let's say, traditionally corporate philanthropy. It's a corporation giving away money to the community. It usually is not very strategic. It's usually more, well, I want to give something to the community. I want to be a good corporate citizen, but it's usually not linked to the core business of that corporation. So it's still in that old logic of, well, I make my money, and when I've made my money, however dirty it was, then I give it away. That kind of logic.
Right.
So that is just to explain the various things. And now, where do I see corporate social entrepreneurship? Corporate social entrepreneurship, for me, goes in that direction of the impact side. It is where employees take active steps of using the assets of the corporation to create that positive effect, to really intentionally solve a problem, rather than just to be less bad at what they're just doing anyway.
Right.
And so that's, for me, the fundamental difference. And that's where it really also leads to a paradigm shift, where corporations suddenly think like, oh my God. I mean, Danone, if you think about it, originally they were like, well, we sell yogurt.
Yeah.
Did they think about what the purpose behind that was? Probably not. But when they realized that actually with that yogurt, they can solve a major problem, namely malnutrition, suddenly they were like, oh my God, my core business can actually really do good compared to the yogurt that you and I eat with the cherry on top that, doesn't really create an impact apart from quenching like some kind of afternoon crave.
Sure.
So that's basically the idea. And I actually really think that, of course, creating a corporate social entrepreneurship initiative internally, and I can talk about a couple of examples, can also positively contribute to your ESG ratings, right? But it goes way beyond. It goes way beyond. It goes much further, and it's much more advanced, and hopefully has that effect of kind of a speedboat running ahead of that big corporate tanker and pulling that big corporate tanker into a better direction.
Wow. That's a good analogy. I like that. The corporate tanker. Yes, indeed.
So let me I'll make a couple of examples, because otherwise it sounded very theoretical what I just said. So to give you an example, so Novartis is a big pharma company, right? They sell medicines, but pharma companies, as you know, are not always have the best reputation in the world. However, Novartis, for example, they created a business unit called Novartis Social Business, which is solely focused on the bottom of the pyramid, a target group that they normally wouldn't really consider as their target group, because it's hard to reach them. It's not as profitable to reach them. It's just hassle, quote unquote, from a corporate perspective, and they can't maximize their profit there. But they still decided to create that business unit, Novartis Social Business, that indeed addresses exactly that target group across South Asia and also Sub-Saharan Africa. And it has brought them incredible benefit. It has led to the fact that they've innovated, new types of packaging that they can then also use in their core business, or new ways of actually reaching customers, etc. And of course, at the same time, they haven't lost money. They've been able to break even on this thing. And they've created a major social impact at delivering these medication at a very low price, and also in creating healthcare education as well. Or another example is, for example, AXA, the big insurance company from France, who have created something called AXA Emerging Customers, where they actually, again, focus on, which formally seems like a very unprofitable customer segment, where they go to the very, very lowest part of the middle class, or the top of the bottom of the pyramid, and actually sell to them insurances that are tailor-made to their needs, that are, for example, for single moms or for poor people that actually can hardly pay for houses insurance, but they need the house insurance to be, if like fire insurance, etc., to be able to rent places, to be able to, be in an okay neighborhood, etc. So for these basic needs, they provide insurance again to that kind of group. And again, they've learned a lot because they've had to deliver that in a much more digital way than their normal insurances. So again, they also have innovation benefits that come back to the business. They don't lose money, and at the same time, they create a major social impact. So these would be two examples of like intentionally positive business models that large corporates can develop. And the cool thing about this is that obviously, if a corporation does something like this, it can very quickly go to scale. And B, of course, the other thing is that it actually helps also have an impact on changing the mindsets of the whole corporation. So, for example, we did research last year with over 50 corporations that had these corporate social entrepreneurial initiatives. And over 60% said that it actually really led to a mindset shift within the company to actually see how indeed otherwise they would measure success. So measuring success that goes beyond just the financial impact, but really actually looking at social and environmental dimensions, etc., etc., etc. So I can talk about this for hours, as you see. I love
it. And I guess that actually brings me to, those watching that are, entrepreneurs maybe within a large organization, and they're just wondering how to kind of, break down those corporate walls, so to speak. Structurally, like, what is, the role of executives in all of this, and how important is it, top-down mentality and transformation? Like, say, C-level executives need to be on board or on the same page for a social entrepreneur to be successful, right? So I guess in your experiences, you probably come across, the push and the pull, so to speak. So how do you navigate that space?
Look, we clearly know that there's something that we call the corporate immune system that, like kicks away everything that doesn't sound like profit making. So like everything that doesn't sound like profit easily just gets killed off very quickly.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit into the system of the corporation. So that's definitely a challenge that most social entrepreneurs face. And of course, they have a much higher success rate if they actually do have buy-in from the board or from C-level executives. Because of course they will then be sheltered and protected, and they can do their things and learn things, and it will take time. And it gives them a little bit more space to actually explore and be successful in the end. So there are a number of challenges, in getting executives involved is of course very, very good. But we've also seen examples where people have actually just started the initiatives even behind the scenes, got them off the ground, and once they were a fait accompli, the executives couldn't say no anymore. I mean, we've seen really, really guerrilla activities, and we've also seen top-down mandated initiatives. Both really in the end work, but in the long run, you need the C-level buy-in to really make it successful and not to have it killed off after a couple of years.
Right. It's a long-term, prospect. It's not a short fix, so to speak.
Exactly.
And then I guess we will come to the questions. Got some great questions coming in. But I guess what advice would you give to social entrepreneurs watching today as they try to implement and tackle, I guess, social inequality, improve the planet's overall health, these big objectives that we all wish we could do more for, and they are the Trojan horses within these organizations. So I guess any tips or tricks?
Well, I think for both social entrepreneurs as well as social entrepreneurs, the one thing I can only say is keep on going.
Yeah.
So it's all about just keep on going, don't give up. Keep on going, don't give up. Stay focused on that mission. And don't be discouraged if something doesn't work out. Like big social challenges just take time to get tackled. And also, if I think about my own trajectory in the 10 years ago when I was talking to corporates, or anyone really for that matter, I always had to explain what a social business was. And I really had to start from scratch. And people were always like, oh, but that's a business. No, it's social. Oh, it's an NGO. No, it's a hybrid.
Right.
And so it just takes time. And now 10 years down the line, like, it's a much more common topic and many more people have seen its benefits. So it's the same with anything that you guys are working on right now. Don't give up. You will be able to prove your model and just continue pushing the envelope, because we need that change in the economy.
Absolutely. So to some quick questions we have, and we've got some time left. So Tom Dretcher has asked, how much more corporate involvement in social business is needed for a large-scale change, like to see significant change?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, again, the two sides, right? There's the side of the corporate just being involved in external social businesses, i.e., for example, buying from them, sourcing from them, for example, which of course is a great opportunity to bring those two worlds together, and actually helps those social businesses generate more revenue, grow, and thereby obviously be able to create more impact. But there's also the element of the corporate itself over time transforming more into a social business. And there, I think we still have a long, long way to go. What I'm excited about is to see that indeed there are pressures coming from a variety of different sides. Grassroots movements like the Fridays for Futures or Black Lives Matter are pushing corporations to change. Just generally, customers are much more oriented towards transparency. Also now with the ESG investing movement that we talked about earlier, at least corporates are forced to actually measure the negative impact, so the harm that they're creating. And so they have to show each year how they're less creating harm, and ideally at some point come to like a net zero or even net positive effect, hopefully, on the world. So in other words, I do think that there's a lot to learn from social business models for corporations, and I think there's still a long way.
Long way to go.
I feel that there's traction now.
traction.
That's what I would say. And I see another question here from Bruce Walker, which goes in the similar direction. So I'll just put that in the same. The question was, what do you think is the biggest barrier for SMEs getting into corporate supply and value chains? Since I just sort of touched on that topic, we're actually doing some research on that right now to really get an understanding of why it is indeed so hard to get social businesses to buy from corporate, to sell to corporates, and like from corporates to buy from social businesses. And I think there's a number of things that are hard, which is, of course, they're often at different size levels and just have different kind of views of the world. And what we're trying to do is actually bring these two sides together more to actually educate both procurement people as well as the social entrepreneurs what the requirements of corporates are. But the main thing is really size. It is, of course, level of quality. It's regularity, because, of course, the social businesses are working often with, very vulnerable communities. So it's a little harder for them to, deliver the perfect quality and size. But we've seen a number of companies also in our portfolio that have grown with large corporates. So, for example, we have a company called Rangsutra, which works with around 2,000 textile workers, women that work from home to produce cushions and other things. And IKEA is the buyer of these products. And actually, they have now been working together now for more than, I think, 5-6 years to really establish this relationship. But it did also mean for IKEA to make that investment to want to work with a company like that. It did mean for Rangsutra really, really to up their game very quickly. But these things sometimes take time. There's some translation work that needs to be done. So stay tuned on that one. Stay tuned on that one. We are actually, we're since we're doing that research, we will probably in September, October be sharing the results and also launching a program, knock on wood, if that all goes well, that brings together the corporations together with the social entrepreneurs to really come together, get trained on both sides, and then afterwards, sign contracts and work together.
Brilliant. You guys are covering a lot, and I know we didn't get to touch on it much today, but education and everything, you guys have the whole gamut. So do head to their site, YSB Funds. How can people get in touch with you, Saskia? Which is the best way? Is it via LinkedIn, or if they have LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the best. So Saskia Bruysten, and that's with Bruysten is my LinkedIn, where you can message me. And otherwise, Yunus Social Business, all one word, is also our channel on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the best place to find us. And hope that you'll be interested in more of our work and want to also listen to some of the work that we've been doing, events, etc.
For sure. It's phenomenal stuff. And I have to say, the fact that you mentioned at the start of this talk that you had the realization in your mid-20s, like, what am I doing with my career and my purpose, is just extraordinary. So kudos to you. I know there's a lot of 20-somethings tuning in today. So
you're still 20-something, okay?
I know in my mind I'm still 20-something. Hello. But I know everyone's listening that are in their 20s. Keep on keeping on. You are the future. And thank you, Saskia, for joining us today. Really appreciate your input.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, January. It was really fun to talk to you.
You too. Thank you. And back to you guys in London.